And tonight I want to specialize more or less in bishops. But I'm going to show a few other pictures first, if I get a chance, that will show us how to read pictures. I can count 3 kinds of material that the early church has left us to tell us about women who were bishops back in the early centuries. The first kind of material they've left us is inscriptions, words chiseled in stone, written in stone, as we say. They've survived because for the most part they've been buried and forgotten. No one has broken them or interfered with them in the intervening centuries. So we do have the verbal material. Let me mention a couple of types of verbal material that we have that talk about women bishops. Joan Morris, who was probably the earliest person in recent times to write about this, ran across an inscription that talks about an episcopa Terni, a woman bishop of the city of Terni in Italy. Another interesting one, and here it's kind of a long inscription, so I'll read from it. This is the edition of Ute Eisen, who's, I think she told me she was the first woman professor in theology at Frankfurt University in Germany. She's a great scholar, and a very accurate scholar. And when I read Latin, I'm going to read the old-fashioned church Latin, you know, not the classical, but the kind we grew up with, those of us who are old enough to remember the Latin Mass. So anyway, this inscription is a tomb inscription for a woman bishop. Hunc si vis cognosce viator. If you see this, traveler, you will know hic requiescit venerabilis femina episcopa. Wow. Here, I didn't have to translate it, did I? Yeah. Here lies a venerable woman bishop. And I'm beginning to think, based on some other material that I can't present tonight, that the title venerable in this period attached to a woman means a bishop. I'm beginning to think that, based on this and other sources.
What century was that?
It's around the year 500.
Oh.
Yeah, so that would be 500 years of women bishops. Now, most of you could probably agree with me that the concept of bishop goes back to the very early days of the church. People say, well, you know, Paul doesn't mention women bishops in his letters. What kind of women does he mention? Does he mention a lot of women? What are these women doing?
Serving.
A lot of them are heads of households. In fact, people who've counted say that Paul mentions more women heads of households than men heads of households. Now, where does the word bishop come from and what does it mean? The odd thing, the interesting thing about the early church is that 2 of its most important titles are not churchy titles.